What it basically says is that it is not possible to construct a fair voting system. The way that you can think about this in very simple mathematical terms that I know that I think you'll like, Michael, is that all of these things assume that everyone is using exactly the same units,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if one of the agents is using the metric system and someone else is using the imperial system, it turns out you can't even compare the two. There's absolutely no reason to believe that the values that each of these individual agents are developing follow the same linear notion of ordering of Q values. And if that's not the case, then all of these things are basically going to break because all of them boil down to doing what looks like some kind of addition or averaging.
Or maxing.
Or maxing, but maxing is just kind of a weighted averaging, right? Kind of an exponential averaging. And so you end up with a max that way. Same thing with negotiated W learning. You're subtracting things and taking mins. In the end, you're basically assuming that I can compare your 7 with my 7 and it means the same thing.
Right.
But why would your 7 and my 7 mean the same thing? So all of these have that kind of problem. And in fact, there's a paper that written by a student of mine that is a part of the readings that delve into this in more detail. And we could spend a lot of time on it, but actually the idea is very simple, which is really that once you start thinking about goals and you think about these individual modules or individual options as trying to accomplish different things, you have to deal with the fact that their goals may not be completely compatible with one another, and you have to come up with some way of making them compatible. And you can either assume that compatibility by just pretending your 7 and my 7 are the same, or you can say, well, there's some larger goal you're trying to accomplish that the arbitrator knows about, and the arbitrator is going to make decisions based upon whether it accomplishes that big goal. In the predator-prey case, for example, the big goal might be living long enough to reproduce. And so I'm going to pick the sub-goals that allow me to live long enough to reproduce.
I see. I think. So there's a high-level goal and then these sub-goals that are chosen to try to bring about the high-level goal.
Right. And so it's the arbitrator that has to decide what's going on. So this seems like a kind of straightforward thing, but I actually think it's kind of cool, right? That basically we went from actions to abstract actions, these options. Those abstract actions actually turn out to be, or at least one could look at it this way, ways of accomplishing goals. Once you have these ways of accomplishing goals, then suddenly you realize, well, these goals don't necessarily have to be compatible with one another. And so I have to deal with that compatibility. And so you've moved from an MDP with primitive actions to this larger notion of balancing trade-offs as you're trying to accomplish some large goal for the entire system. And in the end, they're still all MDPs because they're SMDPs and SMDPs are MDPs. And in the end, all of that reinforcement learning stuff that we've been talking about throughout the entire term still applies.
And you've kind of brought together generalization with multi-agent, type of thinking.
Yeah, so we got multi-agents, we got single agents, we got multiple goals, we got conflicting goals, we've got abstraction, and this gives us scale, and everything's wonderful.
Hallelujah.